Just 100 days to go until USP 797 becomes official. For the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to be talking with several experts about what you can do to be fully prepared for November 1st. So welcome to Dwell Time, presented live from Contec Healthcare. We are in Studio 289 in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I'm here with Rachel Hansen, and in just a few minutes, she's going to walk through many of the resources that Contec Healthcare is launching today to help make sure that you are prepared. But first, let's bring in Michael Myers and Kate Douglas. Michael needs no introduction. You've probably seen him on a few Contec Healthcare webinars. So let's turn it over to Michael and Kate to talk about what you can do between now and November 1st.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm really excited this morning. This isn't going to be a full webinar, but we wanted to take a few minutes with this 100-day sort of countdown beginning today. Joining me is Kate Douglas. A lot of you guys are familiar with Kate. She's formerly the principal with Critical Point. A lot of us went to boot camp up there and learned a lot from Kate. And now she works with us as sort of a sterile compounding expert and consultant. So wanted to grab her on the line. Kate, we've got 100 days before the chapter's official and becomes enforceable. So what's your advice to sterile compounders?
Well, thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me. First, before I go into some of the things that don't relate to Contec material, I want to talk a little bit about how important, and just stress to everybody, how important hand hygiene and garbing, contamination control, cleaning and disinfection, and material handling are. It's every bit as important as sterile compounding is, and Rachel's going to go over those with you later. I guess the first thing I'd like to ask everybody, it sounds really obvious, but do you all have a copy of the chapter? You can't believe how many places I've gone and people don't have a copy of the chapter. So it's real important that you have a copy. You've read it. I've probably read it about 30 times so far, and I'm sure that'll get up into the hundreds, but you really can't prepare by just following other people's lead. And you can obtain a copy by signing up for the USP Compounding Compendium at uspcompounding.usp.org/compounding. They also have a lot of other good resources there, like FAQs. They have a BUD comparison from the current chapter to this one. And please make sure that you sign up for compounding updates.
Yeah, and I'll back up what Kate said there. Those FAQs, there's a lot of information in there. People have raised questions, how, in case, perhaps an inspector might ask me about this, what's the interpretation of that compounding expert committee? And you're going to get those in those FAQs versus in the chapter itself. So make sure you read those and revisit those frequently. What else, Kate? I know I always talk to folks about teams, having, a train the trainer scenarios, or, in the chapter, we talk about designated persons. How are they,
Right.
How do they build and assign those teams?
Yeah, it's real important that everybody on the compounding team understands what the changes are and the basis for them, the rationale. People tend to do what they understand. So let's not just check off a designated person or most likely persons, because it's too big a job for one person to do. But let's try to make sure that everybody on the team is involved, and that is going to lead to better outcomes. I do want to kind of just give you a heads up that I know one of the things that's really been overwhelming for a lot of folks, especially those who have an IV workflow and healthcare system, is to update all the BUDs, either on the compounding records or your master formulation records. So that's a really important thing. And sometimes you've got it from an operational perspective, but you haven't backed into the documentation part that's in your current systems like Epic or whatever it is you have. So that's another thing that people have complained to me that was kind of overwhelming for them.
We think about this process, certainly with 100 days to go. We hope people, sort of started by now. And quite frankly, we've had a couple of false starts, with the 2019 chapter that was published and remanded. and we've had a sort of a year lag time. But if someone hasn't started, or if they're sort of wondering about how they do this launch in this last 100 days, how should this process begin?
You're giving me a hot flash when you tell me they haven't started at all. I hope that's not the case. I guess I think a lot of compounding organizations, there was a lot of excitement around sterile compounding after the initial kind of getting your arms around the 2008 version. We had, 8 or 10 years there where a variety of sterile compounding experts were talking about best practices. So a lot of those best practices that you all have been reading about in magazines and in articles and going to classes about, a lot of those have the committee took them and transferred them into the chapter. So I'm hoping that a lot of you just kind of by osmosis over the years have been able to start on your way. If you haven't, you got to get started. It's hard to there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things to put your arms around. So again, go back, read it, and I want to just give a shout out because people think COVID's gone, but I know healthcare workers, including pharmacy workers, are still short-staffed, still under-resourced, and burnt out from the whole COVID 19 thing that we all went through. So I understand it's overwhelming and there's a lot of things to do. Certainly, physical plant stuff you may not be able to have time to implement at this point. But a lot of the work practice stuff, I think you still have sufficient time to be able to do that.
Yeah, that is, and you'll be learning in just a few minutes from Rachel some details about our Cleanovators event this October. But one of our speakers is going to be addressing just that, how they've been dealing with not only staffing shortage, but material shortages on everything that, over the past 2 to 3 years that pharmacies have been dealing with. Generally when I'm on screen, at Contec, we're always teaching about cleaning and disinfecting, decontamination and hazardous compounding environments. That's our focus, obviously, but that's a real small part of this chapter. And that's why I really wanted to get you here today, Kate. So what advice do you have for folks outside of Contec's realm in getting ready for this?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to condense that into like 3 minutes or less. I do want to point out that I think that the changes that have been made and the detail that's been provided in the training and competency section is really great. I really applaud the committee for adding glove fingertip sampling after media fill units, as well as increasing the frequency of media fill units. I know it's really important that we don't always look at things as more work, but there's a rationale for doing those things. That's how we can be sure and can look our patients in the face, and sometimes ourselves when we become a patient, that our compounders are able to verify that they have the appropriate aseptic technique. So, I think that the entire environmental sampling section is so much more improved. The detail and the explanation of how to do things and why to do things is light years beyond what was provided previous to that.
Yeah, and a lot too with the engineering controls themselves, the operation of them, air changes, not just, sort of the cleaning of them, how they're operating on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, one thing I want to just point out to everybody, and again, if you haven't started some of the engineering control changes, that's kind of a longer term thing. But one of the things the chapter did do was clarify that the minimum required air changes for an ISO 8 space, which usually is your ante room, is now 20. It was kind of not talked about in the previous chapter. With that said, I want to tell everybody that most of the clean room designs that I've been involved with have air changes up 40, 50, 60 in the ante room. And the reason for that is us dirty folks are coming in there. And depending on your work practices, there can be a variety of different activities. Though we'd like to say the ante room is only for hand hygiene and garbing, we know that in some some practices, there's other types of things going on there, which are also particulate bearing. So it's important to understand that the air changes now are going to be required to be 20 in the ISO 8 spaces and 30 in the ISO 7. The other thing I want to like really applaud about is that I love the exemption, the removal of the exemption from the for the CAIs and the CACIs before we were able to compound in isolators, not put in clean room suites. But now in order to get category 1 or category 2 dating, these isolators, now called RABs, the CAIs, need to be put in an ISO 7 buffer room that's serviced by an ISO 7 or 8 ante room. And they may look like they provide a more secure compounding environment, but they indeed do not. And I'm hoping that a lot of people will get the capital expenditure to move isolators out or move RABs out and bring LAFWs in. They'll pay for themselves over time in both improved throughput and efficiency for your compounders, as well as an easier to maintain microbial state inside that ISO 5 space. They're just easier to clean and easier to maintain. So that was pretty exciting to me because I never liked what we were doing with isolators or RABs prior to that.
Yeah. And you were talking about some of your being a fan of where the CEC came in and provided a great more level of detail for folks to be able to follow, especially with environmental and personnel sampling. That's a big change, primarily just because before, I don't know that we had enough data to really tell a story.
No, I used to tell people I'll be collecting Medicare by the time I get a trend. The problem is I'm now old, so I actually am collecting Medicare, so it's not a good story for me anymore. Um, you know, the frequency of the surface sampling and personnel sampling, the glove fingertip sampling and surface sampling are more personnel metrics. They're related to the work practices themselves. So that's the stuff we need to do more frequently so that we can see if our practices, our procedures, our gowning, our garbing, our aseptic technique, our ongoing cleaning and disinfection throughout the day is resulting in the kind of environment we want. And whereas the air sampling is more of a facility metric, it's more related to how your facility's functioning. And if it was designed and built properly, and if you're maintaining it properly, those indices tend to fluctuate less often. They say in management the hardest thing is to control and to get consistent work practices from people, because we all have bad days and good days. So I think I really applaud that. I think it's great for people now if we're not exceeding action limits. We're not having to identify CFUs and where they're from. So I think that that's going to help a lot of people. But I guess I want to leave you with the idea, instead of looking this as extra work to do, we're doing a lot of work in material handling and our garbing and our cleaning and disinfecting and our proper conduct in the buffer room and our aseptic technique. So if we're doing all this stuff, isn't it nice to be able to conduct a pretty simple test with surface sampling and glove fingertip sampling that's going to give us feedback right away to let us know if what we're doing is effective in creating the kind of environment that we know it's safe to compound in? So I think that's the way we got to look at it. We got to raise our bar and say, we owe our patients some data that allows us to be comfortable with what we're doing.
And that data is, I get asked a lot of times about, how people can respond to inspectors, and the data is really the best answer. That, prove that you're maintaining that state of control, prove your employees are following, these best work practices and things like that. Well, Kate, thank you for your time. Thanks for giving us a couple of minutes this morning. Any final thoughts?
I guess I want to remind everybody, because USP 800's been out for a long time now, but it hasn't been enforceable. Um, so it becomes compendially applicable on November 1st. So hopefully everybody's ready, because those standards can be enforced as well. And of course, those don't have so much to do with patient safety as they do making sure our workers are safe at all times. So thanks for
Well, I
having
can't
me. I
wait for
appreciate
November
it.
1st. Yeah, I can't wait for November 1st to get here. I'm going to throw it back now to Rachel and Daniel to tell you about some resources that you can use over these next 100 days and the big Cleanovators event that I hinted at.
Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Kate. So yes, I'm here with Rachel Hansen. She is Contec's marketing manager for our healthcare group. And we're going to just talk about a couple of quick things before we leave you, of ways that Contec is working to come along side by side with you as you prepare for November 1st. So Rachel, let's start off with, what is the USP experience?
I'm glad you asked, Daniel. So sections on our website that speak to USP. So if you're on our website, and you should see it on your screen right now, there's a little tab that says USP Standards on the very top. And when you hover on USP Standards, you will be able to see our overview, chapter 797, 800, and 825. If you click on 797, you'll see this page that I'm showing you right now. A lot of the things that Kate said earlier about cleaning and disinfection, operator conduct, we have put together all of these best practices here for you. So clicking on the best practices, you're able to read through some of these things just as great reminders. And we've also put together resources for you. So I hope that everybody will take this opportunity to jump on our website and navigate through these pages, because they're going to be really helpful, especially as we near November 1st.
And we put a resources QR code on your screen. So all of the things that Rachel and me are about to roll through, you can scan that QR code and there'll be a single page there where you can check them all out. So the next one, you'll definitely want to check the QR code to sign up for this. We're launching a newsletter.
Yes, so we are officially launching our quarterly newsletter tomorrow. So we heard from so many of you just requesting to be updated on whether it's new products or messages from the field. And so now we have a newsletter. It's going out tomorrow. Again, as Daniel mentioned, that QR code will get you to sign up for it if you're not already on our newsletter list. But thank you so much for your feedback and letting us know that you want to hear from us. So again, it's quarterly, so we will not be ambushing your inbox by any means, but we hope that you'll sign up.
Okay, the last big thing that we want to talk about is our Cleanovators event. This is the 4th annual Cleanovators. We've got an exciting lineup of speakers. Of course, it'll be hosted by Michael Myers. We'll also be joined by Mark Ham, Abby Roth, and Crystal Stefanik, who are all industry experts. And you can scan the QR code to go register for Cleanovators and learn more about the topics that they will be presenting on. That'll be held October 17th. So we hope that you will join us there. Anything else on that? We have a special panel as well, right?
Yes, at the very end of the Cleanovators event, we will have a panel of experts. So I encourage everybody, stay engaged while you are on Cleanovators. Send in your questions, because we will be taking those questions at the end with our panel.
So you have 100 days to go. Contec Healthcare is committed to come along side by side with you and help support you through all of the challenges you have to get ready for November 1st. Also in the QR code, you can scan and find your local Contec representative. We have people all over the country ready to assist you. There's also a link to our webinar gallery, so you can see some of the presentations that Michael had talked about and that we have previously conducted here. And just in conclusion for this, like Kate said, so much of this can be also overwhelming. This has been a long journey to get to where we are right now, and there's still 100 days to go, right? So to everyone who works in healthcare, I just want to say from myself, thank you. And from all of us at Contec Healthcare, thank you. What you do today protects all of our tomorrows. So as you learn new things and learn new protocols, you're continuing this journey to prevent harm. And we appreciate you taking the time to work with us, partner with us, and learn along with us as we prepare for November 1st. So thank you for watching Dwell Time today. If you have any questions, You can use the QR code and the Contact Us form to reach out. Thank you for joining us.